the broken heirloom. The air in the Valenti Manor study was thick with the scent of aged leather, Cuban cigar smoke, and a restless, predatory silence that only existed when the heads of New York's most dominant families convened. To the world, this room was Dante Valenti's sanctum, the inner circle where power was consolidated and dispensed. To Sabine Cassini, it was a gilded cage she had willingly flown into 3 years ago. She didn't belong in this room, not officially. The wives and fiancés of the commission members were typically fragile, porcelain things meant for society pages and silent deference. Sabine was neither. She was the only daughter of Don Cesare Cassini, a woman educated in the art of the deal and the necessity of violence, traits that Dante, the notorious Stoic, claimed to both despise and crave. She was currently perched on the edge of the antique chaise lounge, pretending to review a stack of outdated architecture blueprints, a flimsy excuse for being present. Her true purpose, which only Dante, and perhaps his eagle-eyed consigliere Marco, understood, was to serve as a constant, shimmering political reminder. She was the bridge between the Valenti and Cassini empires, a living contract of dominance. From across the room, she watched Dante the Stoic Valenti. He was speaking in low, modulated tones with his lieutenants, his voice a dull thrumming that barely disturbed the crystal glasses on the mahogany bar. He wasn't a man who needed to shout. His authority radiated, cold and absolute, from his sharp profile and the uncompromising set of his shoulders in his flawlessly tailored charcoal suit. He was the very picture of restraint, yet every stolen night with Sabine proved that control was only a facade. 3 years. Tonight marked their 3-year anniversary, not of their official public courtship, which was a well-managed lie lasting a few months, but of the very first night she had defied him. Sabine remembered the heat of that night with a visceral clarity that defied the study's chilled atmosphere. She had been sent to apprentice under him, a rebellious 19-year-old fresh out of finishing school, and bursting with a need to prove herself to her indifferent father. Dante had dismissed her with an icy superiority that had ignited her simmering rage. "You're a distraction, Miss Cassini," he'd said, not even looking up from his file. "Go back to your little sketches and your gossip." That night, in a fury fueled by whiskey and wounded pride, she hadn't just tried to tame him, she had shattered his iron control. She'd found his private supply of rare scotch, laced it with a potent, experimental muscle relaxant she'd stolen from her uncle's lab, and waited. When the drug took hold, Dante didn't send her away. He'd slammed the door, pinned her to the very chaise lounge she now sat on, and shown her the terrifying, exhilarating man beneath the stoic mask. He hadn't whispered Principessa. His word for her was different, heavier, and far more dangerous. Cardinal. Cardinal. A vital piece, a high-ranking official, a prize to be captured and possessed. That name, hissed in the dark while his powerful hands gripped her waist, had made her fall completely. She was the woman who saw the raw truth of Dante Valenti. She was the one he lost control for. That knowledge, that secret shared intimacy, was the foundation of her entire life now. Tonight, she carried that shared secret in the pocket of her satin dress. It was a small, heavy silver cigarette case, a Valenti heirloom she'd found listed in an obscure auction catalog. She'd spent 6 months arranging its purchase and engraving. Inside, she had tucked a note: "Say yes. Say forever." She had planned the proposal meticulously. When his lieutenants cleared out, she would send the maids away, pour his favorite wine, and simply hand him the case. No grand public gesture, just the two of them, acknowledging that their clandestine reality was ready to become their forever. Marco, Dante's consigliere, cleared his throat, signaling the meeting's end. The other men, all granite faces and tailored threats, filtered out. The heavy mahogany door clicked shut, leaving Dante and Sabine alone, separated only by the vast expanse of the Persian rug. Dante finally turned, his silver-gray eyes meeting hers. There was a fraction of a second where his gaze softened, a flicker of the man who called her Cardinal. "The Cassini files are finalized. Your father agrees to the port acquisition," he said, his voice dropping to the low, resonant tone reserved only for her. It was his version of a greeting. Sabine stood, smoothing the folds of her dress. "He always does what you tell him, Dante. He's predictable. And you, Sabine? Are you being good?" He walked toward her, slowly, deliberately, a predator closing a distance. She tilted her head. "Good is boring." "I'm being productive." She reached for his hand, tracing the hard line of his knuckles. "But the files can wait." "It's midnight." Dante's hand remained still under hers. "Midnight means nothing, tesoro." He used the Italian endearment as a subtle warning, a reminder of the power dynamic. She ignored the warning. "It means our 3 years. I cooked. The maids are gone. I have something to show you." He pulled his hand away, not roughly, but with a cold finality that always sent a shiver down her spine. "I apologize, Cardinal. Tonight is impossible. There has been a complication." I have an urgent matter. Her smile froze. Urgent? The port deal is done. What could be more urgent than the commission's business? Or us? Serafina, he stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. The name hit Sabine with the force of a physical blow. Serafina, Dante's ex-fiancé, the fragile martyr who had supposedly taken a bullet for him years ago, forcing him to send her away for her recovery. The woman whose memory Dante claimed was a shadow of duty he was forced to live with. What about her? Sabine asked, her voice dangerously even. The silver case in her pocket felt like a lead weight. She returned early. She is experiencing severe anxiety. I have to go to the retreat house immediately, Dante explained, running a hand over the back of his neck. It was a familiar, dismissive gesture. Her stability is paramount to the commission's past allegiances. You know this, Sabine scoffed. Her stability? Dante, she's a grown woman. Send Marco. Send her doctor. Don't tell me you're going to hold her hand while she cries over a manicure she chipped. The air snapped with tension. Dante's eyes narrowed, the silver turning to steel. Watch your tone, Sabine. Serafina is fragile. She nearly died for my family. She deserves respect, not your petty jealousy. Petty jealousy? Sabine's voice rose, losing its carefully cultivated composure. You cancel our night for a ghost. For the woman you claim you only keep around out of some outdated sense of debt. Am I not dead enough? My family's alliance? My presence? My everything? You are too much, Sabine. Dante's voice was the cold, terrifying murmur of a glacier. You are loud. You are relentless. Serafina is a calming presence. She asks for nothing. You ask for everything. He paused, his expression hardening. I'm leaving. Be here when I return. He turned and strode toward the study door, dismissing her entirely. Be here when I return. That phrase, usually a promise of passionate reunion, now sounded like a command to stay in her cage. Wait, she called, the single word stopping him with her intensity. She pulled the silver cigarette case from her pocket. The weight of it was suddenly unbearable. Take this. It's yours. She tossed it onto his large, cluttered desk. It skidded across the smooth mahogany and hit the edge of a bronze bust, popping open to reveal the small note. Say yes. Say forever. Dante looked at the open case, then back at Sabine. He didn't move toward it. He didn't even flinch. Is this another one of your desperate attempts to provoke me, Tesoro? No, Sabine whispered, her eyes burning. It's the question that tells me everything I need to know about your loyalty. Dante simply stared at her, his face a granite mask. Then, he looked at his watch. I'm late. We will discuss this when I come back, he said. And with that, he walked out and closed the heavy door with a decisive thud. The long, cold night. Sabine didn't move for a long time. She stood in the dead center of the vast, quiet study, the air suddenly thick with the absence of the man she loved. The silver cigarette case lay open on the desk, mocking her. Say yes. Say forever. He couldn't even bother to pick it up. She slowly walked over to the desk, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. She picked up the case, noting the exquisite custom etching of the Valenti crest intertwined with the Cassini lily. It was meant to symbolize their merger, their unbreakable future. Now it felt like a sick joke. She reached for the private phone line on his desk, her fingers flying over the numbers for Marco, the consigliere. Marco answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and professional. Miss Cassini? Marco, did Dante tell you where he was going? He did, Miss Cassini, to the Valenti retreat house upstate. Serafina arrived from Switzerland. She is delicate, and the journey exhausted her. Boss Valenti wants to ensure her transition is smooth. He is to stay with her until the morning. Stay with her until the morning. The phrase echoed the language Dante used when he was staying with Sabine. Did he say anything else? Sabine asked, her voice cracking slightly. Marco hesitated. He told me to prepare a separate file for the commission. It seems Miss Serafina is being formally reinstated as his official fiancé, pending her full recovery, and your alliance with the Cassini family being ratified, of course. It's all highly confidential, Miss Cassini. The polite, clinical confirmation was worse than any angry confession. Formally reinstated. Sabine was the bridge. Serafina was the destination. Thank you, Marco, Sabine said, her voice surprisingly steady. She hung up and stared at the dark, accusing screen of the phone. The need to know became an agonizing, physical ache. She had to see it. She had to witness the tenderness that Dante refused to show her. It was a morbid curiosity, a compulsion to confirm the absolute worst so that she could finally begin to bleed. She slipped out of the silent mansion, climbed into her sleek black Maserati Gran Turismo, and drove. She drove faster than she ever had, the car a black blur on the upstate highway, its roar mirroring the escalating tempest in her soul. The unlocked door. The Valenti retreat house was a secluded, sprawling fortress nestled deep in the Adirondack foothills. She didn't announce herself. She simply used her keycard, the one Dante had given her, claiming, "It's so you can come to me whenever you like, Cardinal." The house was eerily silent. She walked through the grand, marble-floored foyer, past the dark, opulent sitting rooms, and up the spiral staircase. She knew the house layout intimately, knew exactly which bedroom Dante reserved for his personal use when he was upstate. The door was slightly ajar. Sabine stopped, her heart hammering against her ribs so violently she could barely hear the faint murmur coming from inside. She pushed the door open just enough to see. The room was bathed in the soft, golden light of a fireplace. Serafina was sitting up in the massive, four-poster bed, bundled in a pristine white silk robe. She was indeed fragile, thin and pale, her delicate features lending her an ethereal, almost childlike vulnerability. But it was Dante's presence that stopped Sabine's breath. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, not aloof, not controlled, but attentive. He was speaking to Serafina in a voice Sabine had never heard him use, soft, patient, and full of a profound tenderness that felt alien and sickeningly intimate. The commission meeting was rough, Dante. They were talking about the Morano family. Those people are all legitimate now. They're a threat to the old ways, Serafina murmured, her voice a reedy whisper. Don't worry your beautiful head with politics, mia vita, Dante said, brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. He touched her as if she were made of Venetian glass, liable to shatter at any moment. That is my problem, not yours. You need rest. You need stability, Serafina smiled, a weak but radiant expression of utter trust. You are my stability, Dante. You are all I have. Promise me you won't let anyone hurt my mother? She is so worried about the Cassini girl stirring up trouble. Dante's expression hardened, momentarily losing the tenderness he held for Serafina. The Cassini girl is irrelevant. She is a tool I am keeping on a short leash. She causes problems, but she is easily managed. I am preparing to remove her and solidify our future, mia vita. I will ensure your mother, the matriarch, is safe. And you will be safe. Everything I do for you. The Cassini girl is irrelevant. A tool I am keeping on a short leash. The air left Sabine's lungs in a silent, agonizing gasp. The heat from the fireplace suddenly felt like a physical burn. She remembered every moment of their 3 years. Every time he called her Cardinal, she had thought it meant she was essential, indispensable. Now she knew it meant she was a highly valued piece of his political chess game, a piece he was about to sacrifice. He didn't lose control for her. He performed loss of control to solidify his ownership. She was a distraction he kept in the wings, a dangerous toy he played with until his true, fragile prize returned. Serafina reached out, and Dante took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. A simple, gentle gesture he had never offered Sabine outside of the bedroom. Just get some sleep, mia vita, Dante said, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing a soft, reverent kiss to her knuckles. That was it, the final, absolute confirmation. The shattered glass of her heart made no sound. The wound was cold and clean. Sabine pulled back from the door, careful not to let the hinge creak. She walked back down the stairs, her steps slow and deliberate, the fierce fire in her eyes now replaced by a terrifying, frozen calm. The weight of the secret. Back in her Maserati, Sabine sat for a moment, the keys cold in her hand. She pulled out the silver cigarette case and stared at the engraved lily and crest. She had been a fool, a passionate, arrogant fool who believed her intensity was a match for his ice. She drove back to the Valenti manor, the quiet of the empty house now a welcome relief. She went straight to the library, a room Dante never used for business, filled only with dusty first editions. She pulled the single volume of Dante's Inferno, a cruel joke he had placed there, and behind it was the safe. She knew the code. She always knew the codes. He thought he was giving her trust. He was giving her leash. Inside the safe were Dante's financial records, political contracts, and his personal phone. A second phone with a hidden chip for untraceable transactions. Sabine didn't touch the sensitive documents. Her revenge wouldn't be messy or emotional. It would be clinical, targeted, and financially devastating. She snapped a photo of the unique, complex security key for his primary bank vault, the one he kept hidden behind a portrait in his study. This wasn't for immediate use, but for future leverage. She took the hidden phone and powered it on. She meticulously copied all the contacts for his offshore accounts and his private stock holdings. The man who called her Cardinal would learn that sometimes the queen moves a piece off the board entirely. She then went to the massive, soundproofed private garage. It housed Dante's collection of classic vehicles, his true obsession. There, gleaming under the spotlight, was his 1964 Ferrari 250 GTO, a relic he valued above all else, worth tens of millions and irreplaceable. He had once told her, "I'd rather lose an arm than lose this car." Sabine pulled a small, silver flask of high-proof liquor from her handbag, the same kind she used 3 years ago to drug him. She walked around the Ferrari, tracing its perfect, curved hood with a finger. She opened the flask, pouring the liquid not on the exterior, but into the car's meticulously clean engine bay. She soaked the wiring, the custom filtration system, and the antique leather seats. The fumes immediately filled the cavernous garage. She pulled out a single, monogrammed match and struck it. The flame was small, but the ignition was immediate and violent. The car was instantly engulfed in a hungry, roaring fire. The smell of burning rubber and antique leather was a perverse kind of incense. Sabine didn't run. She watched the fire consume the object of his truest affection until the garage alarms finally began to shriek, a desperate, hysterical wail that sliced through the quiet night. She knew the fire suppression system would eventually kick in, but not before the GTO was reduced to a charred relic. She threw the matchbox down, walked to the garage door, and paused. She sent Marco a single, untraceable text from Dante's hidden phone. "Clean up on aisle 5. I'm out." She then smashed the phone against the marble floor, grinding the pieces beneath her heel. She climbed into her own Maserati. She drove away not wildly, but with a cold, focused determination. She knew Dante would soon find the wreckage of his car, the silence of his home, and the emptiness where her love used to be. But he wouldn't find her. Sabine drove straight to the Cassini compound. Her father, Don Cesare, was already awake, alerted by the Valenti security team's panicked calls. "What the hell did you do, Sabine?" her father demanded, already in a rage. "Dante is on his way back, furious. He said his car is ruined." Sabine looked at her father, whose face mirrored the cold, transactional nature of the entire Cassini empire. "Father, I accept the marriage alliance to the Morano family in Boston. I want the marriage signed, sealed, and announced by Don." "The entire agreement," she said, her voice completely flat. Don Cesare stared at her, momentarily stunned by her calmness amid the chaos. "You accept? After months of fighting it?" "Yes. But I have one condition. After the alliance is ratified, I want my official ties to the Cassini family dissolved. I will be known only as a Morano, and every penny of my inheritance, from my mother's estate, must be immediately placed in a secure trust fund I control. No family access, no access for Dante Valenti. Do you understand?" Don Cesare, sensing a massive, unpredictable power shift and a potential windfall from the Morano alliance, nodded slowly. "Done. But what about Dante?" Sabine gave a cold, humorless smile. "Tell Dante Valenti that I left the tool on the short leash for him to examine. Tell him that the Cardinal has been moved to a new game board. And tell him," she paused, her eyes glinting with a dangerous promise, "that he is no longer invited." With that, Sabine walked past her father and into the night. She left New York, leaving behind the ashes of Dante's prized possession and the even colder ashes of her own shattered heart. Her new life, her campaign of quiet, absolute revenge had just begun. Her destination was Boston, and her reluctant, unassuming future husband, Alessio Morano, was about to receive a bride who was not seeking love, but a shield and a powerful weapon. Chapter 2. The Calculated Gambit. The sunrise over the Atlantic coast was the first thing Sabine Cassini saw that felt genuinely new. It was a brutal, cold light, not the smog-filtered, neon-tainted dawn of Manhattan. She watched it from the private jet her father had hastily arranged, a last, transactional act of servitude before severing their ties. The plane was heading west, straight to Boston, straight to the Morano family, and straight into her meticulously calculated future. Inside the jet, surrounded by the silence of expensive upholstery and the scent of fear still clinging to her, Sabine felt an odd, terrifying peace. The image of the Ferrari 250 GTO consumed by flames was the only comfort she had. She hadn't sought emotional relief, she had sought destruction. And she had achieved it. Dante's most prized object was gone, and the tool he kept on a short leash had delivered the first, crippling blow. The official statement from the Valenti compound, rushed through the discreet channels of the commission before dawn, had been a masterpiece of damage control, a catastrophic electrical fire. No mention of the massive transfer Sabine had authorized from Dante's non-liquid accounts to her own protected trust. No mention of the frantic, whispered conferences over the sudden destabilization of his investment portfolio. Dante Valenti, the stoic, was hemorrhaging control, and the world only saw a minor insurance claim. Sabine's own body was humming with adrenaline, but her mind was a ledger of cold facts. She was financially secure, physically free, and politically necessary. She had forced her father's hand, The Morano alliance was now a fast-track necessity for the Cassini family to survive the immediate fallout with the powerful Valenti empire. By marrying into the Boston family, Sabine wasn't running away. She was acquiring a new shield and a new platform. She opened the file on her lap, reviewing the details of her future husband, Alessio Morano. Age, 32. Role, CEO of Morano Financial Group. De facto head of the Morano family's legitimate operations. Family history: the Moranos were historically a satellite family of the New York Commission, focused on shipping and trade. They aggressively moved into legitimate finance a decade ago, deliberately distancing themselves from the old ways. They maintained power through wealth and political influence, not violence. This made them dangerous, but predictable. Personal profile reserved. Analytical, known for patience and strategic long-term planning. Unmarried. He was the opposite of Dante in every way. Where Dante was fire beneath the ice, Alessio was ice beneath the ice. This suited Sabine perfectly. She didn't want passion. She wanted a contract. The jet touched down smoothly at a private hangar outside Boston. A black armored sedan waited on the tarmac, and a man in a discreet suit stepped out. "Miss Cassini? I am Mr. Morano's lead security detail. Welcome to Boston." The compound was not the oppressive, Gothic fortress of the Valenti Manor. It was a sprawling, modernist estate overlooking the water, all clean lines, glass, and dark stone. It projected wealth, not threat. Sabine was escorted to a large, minimalist office. Standing by a panoramic window, looking out at the choppy gray water, was Alessio Morano. He was tall, lean, and utterly unremarkable in his bearing. He wore an impeccable, conservative suit that spoke of boardrooms, not backrooms. His hair was dark and neatly styled. His features were handsome, but lacked the predatory intensity that defined the men in her world. He turned when she entered, his expression neutral, devoid of judgment or surprise. "Miss Cassini, thank you for arriving so promptly. Please, sit." His voice was low and calm, with a slight, cultured Bostonian cadence. Sabine took the seat opposite his desk. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mr. Morano, let's be direct. The urgency of this alliance is no longer political theory. It is a matter of immediate necessity. I have provoked the Valenti Empire in New York. Dante Valenti will be seeking retribution, and I am now your most valuable and most vulnerable asset." Alessio took the seat across from her, leaning forward slightly, his hands steepled on the desk. His gaze was steady, intelligent, and deeply assessing. "I am aware of the situation, Miss Cassini. The reports we received at dawn were colorful. Ruining a prized GTO is quite a statement. The Cassini alliance is now secured. My family is satisfied. Now, we discuss the terms of the Morano-Cassini marriage contract." Sabine leaned forward, meeting his gaze with the full, cold intensity that had cowed lieutenants in New York. "My terms are simple, Mr. Morano. This is a business alliance, a political shield, and nothing more. I will fulfill my duties as the matriarch of your social and political sphere. I will attend the required functions. I will present a seamless public image. In return, I require a few things." She held up a finger. 1. Absolute political and financial autonomy. I control my own affairs, my own money, and my own trust. You have no right of access or veto. Alessio nodded slowly. Standard prenup for a Cassini heiress. Accepted. 2. I require my own private suite. Our marriage is political, not personal. There will be no demands on my time, my life, or my body. There will be no physical intimacy. Ever. Alessio looked surprised, but only for a fraction of a second. His brow barely furrowed. "Miss Cassini, I am a pragmatic man. This alliance requires an heir within the next 3 years to solidify the merger of our family's assets and prevent future disputes. I am not asking for a romantic commitment, but an heir is non-negotiable." Sabine met his gaze, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "I am not ready to discuss the future of any children, Mr. Morano. For the foreseeable future, the physical integrity of my personal space is paramount. I require time to recover, both emotionally and physically, from the 3 years I spent trapped in New York. I will provide an heir when I am ready to do so, and not a moment before. Until then, you will respect my boundaries." Alessio considered her, his eyes unblinking. He saw the genuine, raw pain beneath her fierce composure. He saw the cold, deep well of betrayal. He saw a woman who had been used and was terrified of being touched again. He sighed, a quiet admission of defeat. "Very well, Miss Cassini. You have your time. We will address the matter of the heir when you initiate the discussion. Until then, the marriage is platonic." 3. Protection. "Dante Valenti will come after me. He will come after your business. He will try to dismantle the Morano family to prove he still holds power. Your protection must be absolute. If you fail, I will not only leave, I will expose your legitimate businesses to the commission, ensuring your complete downfall. Do you accept the consequences? Alessio smiled then, a small, genuine curl of the lip that didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Cassini, if I failed to protect the Morano Empire, you wouldn't need to threaten me. It would be my own downfall. We operate on competence here, not cruelty. I accept your terms, and your threat. He extended a hand across the desk. Welcome to the Morano family, Sabine. Let's make this work. Sabine stared at his hand. It was a hand built for keyboards and contract signings, not pulling triggers or gripping a waist in the dark. It was a hand of quiet power. She finally shook it, her grasp firm and brief. The scorch, Dante's fury. 3 days later, the quiet of the Morano estate was interrupted not by violence, but by a precise, escalating series of financial attacks. Dante Valenti was not a man to rant. He was a man to dismantle. He discovered the scorched GTO within an hour of leaving the retreat house, a moment of profound fury that had shaken his own security detail. But worse was the realization that Sabine had transferred nearly $40 million from the investment funds that had no paper trail. She hadn't just burned his car, she had surgically gutted his secret liquid assets. In New York, the commission was in uproar. Dante's fiancé, Serafina, was rushed to the hospital with a sudden, debilitating relapse of anxiety, and the Valenti patriarch was facing the embarrassing reality that his heir had been thoroughly played by the Cassini girl. Dante's retaliation was swift and targeted. Economic warfare. He couldn't touch the main Morano accounts. They were too large, too legitimate, and too intertwined with the New England economy. So he went after the peripheral but critical assets, a small, boutique shipping firm the Moranos used for specialized cargo, and the local bank that held the majority of their family trust. Attack 1. The shipping firm, Poseidon Maritime, suddenly faced an avalanche of legal challenges, customs holds, and coordinated labor strikes. Within 24 hours, its stock plummeted by 15%. Attack 2. Whispers began to circulate among the elite clientele of the Morano Trust Bank about unstable liquid assets and impending audits from the Commission's oversight bodies. Wealthy clients, prone to panic, started pulling funds. The bank faced a quiet run, bleeding millions in deposits. Sabine was in her secluded, high-ceiling suite, a fortress of her own design, when Alessio came to her door. This was the first time he had sought her out since the contract signing. "Sabine, I thought you should see this," he said, handing her a tablet displaying complex financial metrics. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed a deep, analytical concern. "Dante is hitting the weak spots. Poseidon is a small target, easy to destabilize with labor threats. The bank attack is more subtle, spreading rumors to trigger panic withdrawals. It's effective. He's a chess player, not a boxer." Sabine noted, her eyes scanning the data with the same practiced ease as Alessio. "Exactly," Alessio confirmed. "He wants to hurt us enough to force us to send you back as a peace offering. He wants his tool back, and he wants his 40 million. And what is your counter strategy?" Sabine asked, crossing her arms. She was testing him. Dante would have launched a massive, violent counterattack, escalating the war. Alessio walked to the window, watching the rain streak the glass. "Dante is betting on the old ways, fear and brute force. We will bet on the new, precision and patience. He fights in the dark. We will fight in the light." He pointed to a graph showing the steady outflow from the Morano Trust Bank. "We can stop the panic, but we must do it immediately and publicly." "How?" "By showing utter confidence. We will infuse the bank with a massive visible injection of capital from our most liquid, legitimate assets, the exact assets Dante can't touch. And we will not use our own names." He turned to her, a genuine spark of shared purpose lighting his reserved eyes. "You will do it, Sabine. You are publicly a Cassini. You are privately Morano. We will announce a massive, public investment from the Sabine Cassini Trust, buying up all the shares in our own bank that have dropped due to the panic. You will become the primary shareholder, and the public statement will be that the Cassini family is solidifying its alliance with the Moranos by placing its confidence in our bank. The panic ends instantly, and Dante's narrative that we are unstable is destroyed." Sabine stared at him, stunned. He wasn't asking for her body, or her obedience. He was asking for her competence, her identity, and her courage. He was offering her a chance to weaponize her own name against her abuser. "You want me to use my own name to prop up your bank," Sabine summarized. "I want you to use your own power to end this attack. You are the reason he is attacking, and you are the only one who can make him stop without resorting to a blood feud. It's a move he won't anticipate, because it's not what women in our world are allowed to do. They are shields, not swords. Sabine felt a thrilling, terrifying pull of respect. Dante saw her as a possession. Alessio saw her as a partner. If I do this, it makes me visible. It makes me a permanent target. You are already a permanent target, Sabine, Alessio stated calmly. But you will be a target with a vast, immovable financial fortress backing you. The choice is yours. Sabine gave a slow, predatory smile, the kind Dante had once claimed to love, the kind she had extinguished with her grief. Then let's show Dante Valenti that the Cardinal is playing for keeps. When do we announce the public weaponization? The announcement was made the following morning. It was not a press conference, but a sophisticated, digitally disseminated statement through financial news channels. Headline: Cassini heiress solidifies Morano alliance with billion-dollar investment. Sabine, dressed in a sleek, powerful business suit, stood beside Alessio for the accompanying photo. She looked every inch the powerful heiress, cold, composed, and utterly defiant. Alessio looked like the calm, steady power behind her. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The outflow of funds from the Morano Trust Bank ceased. The stock of Poseidon Maritime, which the Morano family had covertly bought low, shot back up as confidence returned. Dante's economic narrative was annihilated by a single public act of financial dominance. In New York, Dante Valenti felt the ground shift beneath him. He had anticipated a desperate, emotional plea from the Moranos. He had not anticipated a cold, strategic counterstrike orchestrated by the woman he called irrelevant. His next call was directed to an old, trusted family contact in Boston, a low-level commission representative named Rocco. Rocco, I need eyes on the Morano house. I need to know everything about her routine. Specifically, what she does alone. Find the crack in the stone wall. The quiet watcher. Meanwhile, at the Morano estate, life returned to its strange, professional routine. Sabine lived in her suite, her cage of choice, working on her laptop, overseeing her newly acquired financial empire. She avoided Alessio, not out of dislike, but out of a deep, psychological need for isolation. She couldn't risk mistaking kindness for affection again. Yet, Alessio respected the boundary completely. He communicated only through official reports and scheduled meetings. He never touched her, never pushed, and never once brought up the traumatic circumstances of her past. One evening, Sabine was in the estate's sprawling library, a high-tech room filled with digital interfaces and leather-bound nonfiction, checking her trust fund. She heard the soft click of the door. Alessio stood there, not in a suit, but in a simple cashmere sweater and slacks, holding a tray with 2 mugs. I apologize for the intrusion. I brought you something. It's a local blend. Helps with the cold, damp evenings here, he said, setting the tray on a side table. Sabine stopped typing, wary. Thank you. But I prefer to be alone. I know, Alessio said, not moving. But I came to discuss the next wave. Dante won't stop now. He'll go operational. Sabine's guard immediately returned. Operational? He won't risk a direct attack. The commission is watching us too closely. No, not direct. He will look for a way to discredit you and, by extension, discredit the alliance. He needs to prove you are unstable, emotional, or a liability. Alessio picked up a mug and held it out to her. Sabine, I need you to understand that Dante saw you as a weapon, but he only understood your volatile power. He failed to see your analytical precision. Now, he will try to prove you are just a dangerous child. Sabine accepted the mug. The warmth spread through her hands, a simple, non-threatening comfort. What kind of attack? He knows you are still in shock from the betrayal. He's going to strike at the memory, the vulnerability, the soft spot. He'll hit you where he thinks you'll break down. Alessio took a measured sip of his own drink. He already did that by sending Serafina to the hospital to ruin our anniversary. He already did that by forcing me out of New York. Alessio shook his head. No, that was political. This will be personal. He'll use the one thing that still haunts you, the truth about why he kept you. He will try to expose something that makes you look foolish, uncontrolled, or disreputable, to sever your legitimacy from the Morano name. Sabine felt a sudden, sickening chill. The truth about why he kept you. Could he reveal that their relationship was engineered? That he used her? That he had a second phone? A second life? He can't prove the details of a private affair, Sabine stated, trying to sound confident. Alessio's eyes, quiet and knowing, fixed on hers. In the Mafia world, the weapon is never the secret itself, but the public perception of the secret. If he can make you look like a crazed woman who burned his car because he chose his true love, he wins. And my family is disgraced. He wasn't wrong. He was logical. He was precise. He treated her not as a broken woman needing repair, but as a crucial business partner, facing an external threat. Sabine took a long sip of the warm, subtly spiced drink. She felt the first, faint cracks in the wall she had built around her heart. It wasn't love, not yet. It was the dawning, unfamiliar realization that she was finally dealing with an honorable man. Then we must stay one step ahead, Sabine said, her voice firm. I will give him nothing. I will show him I am unbreakable. Alessio nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I have no doubt, Sabine, but this time, you don't have to break him alone. Chapter 3. The Untouched Contract. Sabine Cassini settled into the rhythm of the Morano estate, which was less a home and more a high-end corporate fortress. Her personal space, a vast suite dominating the West Wing, became her cage of choice. It was minimalist, sterile, and offered a spectacular, uninterrupted view of the turbulent New England coast. It was the antithesis of the claustrophobic, opulent clutter of the Valenti manor, and she used its space and silence to build a new, impenetrable wall around herself. She and Alessio Morano maintained their relationship strictly by the terms of their contract. Their interactions were confined to Alessio's office, or the estate's command center. They spoke in the clipped professional language of executives discussing a hostile takeover, metrics, exposure, leverage, counter-strategies. He never once inquired about her feelings, her past, or the trauma of the betrayal. He only cared about the damage report and the mitigation plan. This clinical approach was exactly what Sabine needed. Dante had used emotional vulnerability as a leash. Alessio used professional boundaries as a foundation for respect. The wedding date was set for 3 weeks out, a rushed, private ceremony designed to ratify the alliance legally and politically, preempting any further interference from New York. The Quiet Watcher, meanwhile, Dante's quiet war continued. As Alessio had predicted, his attacks shifted from overt financial warfare to destabilizing, reputation-focused strikes. The first strike came in the form of a meticulously crafted, anonymous news leak to a prominent New York gossip column. It didn't mention Sabine by name, but painted a clear picture. A high-ranking commission heir, Serafina, is recovering from a severe anxiety attack triggered by the vengeful, emotional actions of a former flame, a loose cannon whose dangerous volatility has made her an embarrassment to her own family. Sabine read the piece while sipping her morning espresso, her expression unmoved. A predictable move, she noted, sliding the tablet across the mahogany table to Alessio during their morning brief. He wants to establish the narrative. I am the hysterical villain. Serafina is the pure, fragile victim. It's the emotional ammunition for the commission to question my legitimacy as a stabilizing force here. Alessio glanced at the article and swiped it away. Your analysis is correct. The threat is not the content, but the implication. Your value to us is your name's integrity. We counter with silence. We don't acknowledge the noise. Our integrity is in our balance sheet, not a gossip column. Their routine fell into a pattern of mutual professional reliance. Sabine handled the internal security and psychological counter-strategy, while Alessio managed the external, financial defense. One afternoon, Sabine was in the estate's secure archive, reviewing the Morano family's complex history, a habit she maintained to find hidden vulnerabilities Dante might exploit. Alessio found her there, surrounded by dusty ledgers and microfiche readers. Dante hit us again, Alessio stated, his voice calm. He used an old shell company to briefly short the stock of a legitimate Morano-backed charity foundation. Minimal financial damage, but it forced an awkward, public ethics disclosure. He's trying to make us look morally gray. Sabine nodded, running a finger over a brittle page from a 1990s ledger. He's getting desperate for an emotional reaction. He needs to see me break, or at least see you pressure me to fix his problems. He thrives on my submission. She closed the ledger abruptly. I found something, Alessio. It's an old secret, one Dante might be looking for to completely dismantle your family's legitimacy. She revealed a hidden section of the Morano archive, contracts and agreements dating back 20 years. Your father's brother, Lorenzo Morano, was killed during an internal commission dispute 2 decades ago, Sabine said, meeting Alessio's gaze. The official record states it was a tragic accident. These ledgers show he was assassinated by a Valenti enforcer over a territorial dispute. And this, she tapped a microfiche record, shows your father, Don Morano, paid a massive severance package to Lorenzo's widow and son, and signed a non-disclosure agreement with the Valenti family to categorize it as an accident. Alessio's eyes narrowed, the only sign of his rising tension. We know about the feud. The details were sealed to protect the family from retribution. The details were sealed to hide a truth that completely undermines your family's current identity, Sabine countered, her voice low and sharp. Your family abandoned the old ways? No. Your family survived the old ways by bending the knee and buying silence. The Valenti family owns this silence. If Dante leaks this, your public narrative of being a legitimate clean enterprise is destroyed overnight. You are exposed as a conquered territory, still paying tribute to New York. Alessio looked out of the archive window at the turbulent sea, absorbing the weight of the revelation. Thank you for the honesty, Sabine. The old world never lets you go. The price of our silence is very high. The untouched boundary. The next day, Sabine was in her suite when the door chimed. Alessio stood there holding a small, antique wooden box. He was wearing his usual crisp shirt and slacks, looking calm and methodical. Our wedding is next week, he said. This is a gift. Not a romantic gesture, but an item required for the ceremony. Sabine opened the box. Inside lay a delicate diamond and sapphire heirloom necklace, beautiful, understated, and clearly something that had belonged to Alessio's mother. It belonged to my grandmother, Alessio explained. It's tradition. You must wear it. It symbolizes the continuity of the Morano line. You are now the matriarch. Sabine carefully placed the box on her bedside table. I appreciate the gesture, Alessio. I will wear it. Sabine, Alessio began, his voice dropping slightly. I understand the need for space. I understand the need for boundaries. But Dante will assume that I am using force or coercion to keep you here. He will assume the same power dynamic he used. He might try to create an opportunity to rescue you. Sabine felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The idea of Dante rescuing her was a horrifying thought. What are you suggesting? She asked. Alessio stepped closer, maintaining a respectful distance, no closer than the width of the bedside table. I am suggesting a tactical adjustment to our arrangement, he said, his gaze steady and serious. He must see that I don't control you, but that you have willingly chosen to stand beside me. You are still terrified of being touched, or even seen, as vulnerable. But we need a visible counter-narrative to his emotional assault. We need to present a unified front of calm, mutual respect. He picked up a small crystal-framed photograph from her table, a picture of her and her mother from decades ago. The night you burned his car, you were acting out of righteous fury over a profound betrayal. But he will spin it as madness. I need to know, Sabine, and only if you are ready. Can you face the world and face him without the armor of coldness? Can you trust that I will respect your space while we stand side by side? Sabine looked at the photo, then at the heirloom necklace, and finally at Alessio. He was giving her a choice. Dante had only ever given her commands. I will stand by you, Sabine stated, her voice firm. We will present the perfect, unbreakable union. I will be your shield, Alessio. But the boundary remains. The contract remains untouched. Alessio simply nodded. Understood. The integrity of your space is non-negotiable. Thank you, Sabine. He turned and walked out of the suite, closing the door softly behind him. The Morano Protocol. Sabine spent the next 2 days in a blur of meetings and preparations, working side by side with Alessio, preparing for the wedding and the ensuing political scrutiny. They made a strikingly efficient pair. Alessio, the cool strategist, Sabine, the precise executor. They walked the estate grounds together, discussing logistics, security, and market projections. They reviewed the guest list, identifying commission members who would be watching them closely. They spoke for hours, yet never about anything personal. One evening, they were in the massive, formal dining room, the last room they hadn't yet touched, discussing the seating chart for the reception. Sabine was pointing out a potential security flaw in the diagram when her hand grazed Alessio's on the table. She recoiled instantly, pulling her hand back as if burned. Her reaction was involuntary, sharp, and immediate. The memory of Dante's powerful grip, the sense of being held against her will, was still raw. The silence that followed was deafening. Sabine felt a flush of humiliation. She had promised to be unbreakable, and yet a simple, accidental touch had reduced her to a wounded animal. Alessio did not react. He did not apologize, did not ask if she was all right, and did not press her for details. He simply slid the seating chart slightly to the right, creating more distance between them. My apologies, Alessio said, his voice entirely neutral. We should use the stylus for the diagram. It maintains a greater professional distance. He then continued the conversation exactly where they had left off, discussing the placement of the Valenti representative with the same calm focus. Sabine watched him, a slow, profound understanding washing over her. Dante would have seized on that moment. He would have used her flinch as proof of her fragility, demanded an explanation, or worse, used it as an excuse to physically assert his dominance, calling it comfort. Alessio did the opposite. He recognized the trauma, acknowledged the boundary, and immediately provided a professional solution that respected her need for space. He prioritized her emotional safety over his own curiosity or ego. It was in that quiet, untouched moment that the true depth of Dante's cruelty was revealed, not just in his betrayal, but in his violation of her agency. And it was in Alessio's simple act of withdrawal and respect that Sabine felt the first, faint tremor of genuine safety. She realized then that Alessio Morano didn't view her as a delicate object to be sheltered, or a volatile weapon to be contained. He viewed her as a partner whose boundaries were as sacred as the contracts they signed. The contract remained untouched. And in that untouchable space, Sabine finally felt, for the first time in 3 years, truly seen. 4. The threat rises. The rhythm of mutual respect that had settled between Sabine and Alessio was deceptive, a calm before the storm. Their professional partnership had become an intense, almost intimate synergy, played out across the cool, dark surfaces of the Morano command center. They moved around each other with a dancer's awareness, their proximity dictated by strategy, not desire. But the shared focus, the low-lit hours spent deciphering Dante's maneuvers, had created a different kind of heat. It was a sensual tension born not of force, but of precision. Every time Sabine laid a cool hand on the table to mark a vulnerability in Dante's accounts, Alessio's gaze would follow the movement, not with lust, but with deep appreciation for her control. Every time Alessio calmly countered a threat, Sabine's eyes would linger on the slight, proud tension in his jaw. The untouched contract was a physical barrier, but the mental space between them had dissolved into an intoxicating shared atmosphere. One evening, while reviewing encrypted communications, Sabine was slumped in her chair, exhausted. She had been operating on pure adrenaline and rage for weeks. "He's quiet," Sabine murmured, rubbing her temples. "Too quiet. The financial attacks have stopped. This is what frightens me the most." Alessio, seated across the large console, leaned forward, his voice a low, intimate murmur in the quiet room. "He's repositioning. Dante is an expert at the long game. He knows he can't win the balance sheet war, so he's going to attack the one thing we can't hide. Us." Sabine lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "The wedding is in 3 days. The union will be ratified. What more can he do? He can expose a secret that dismantles our legitimacy," Alessio stated, his eyes locking onto hers. "Sabine, I need you to trust me. What is the one truth about your time with Dante that would make the commission view you not as a valuable defector, but as a compromised liability?" Sabine froze. The air thickened. The betrayal, the hidden cameras, the recording of every intimate moment, the cruel confirmation that their love was a mission, was a dark, festering secret she had buried deep. It was the only thing that could truly break her, not financially, but psychologically. "I don't know what you mean," she lied, her voice tight. Alessio didn't challenge the lie. Instead, he reached out, slowly, deliberately, and rested his palm flat on the cool granite surface of the table, just centimeters from her hand. The proximity was a physical boundary, yet the intention was a profound, silent invitation. "Dante Valenti is not just a Mafia heir, Sabine. He is a predator who understands vulnerability as currency. He knows you better than anyone. He knows what he made you feel, and he knows how to weaponize it. If he has leverage that makes your presence here a source of shame for the Morano name, he will use it now." Sabine looked at his hand, then lifted her gaze to his face. The heat of her secret warred with the cool, steady kindness in his eyes. He wasn't demanding the secret. He was offering to share the burden. She took a shaky breath, the confession physically painful. 3 years ago, Dante was told to discipline me. It was a trade, a political favor to my father in exchange for the right to tame the wild Cassini girl. He engineered our relationship. He didn't just sleep with me. He was collecting evidence. Her voice broke on the final word. "He recorded it all, Alessio. Every time, every private moment. He has countless videos. He meant to use them to control me, to ensure I never betrayed him. He viewed my passion as a flaw to be exploited." The control that defined her entire existence shattered for a moment. Tears burned, but she blinked them back, refusing to cry. Alessio's face remained calm, but his eyes were blazing with a cold, righteous fury that was not directed at her, but at Dante. "That is monstrous," he stated, his voice a low, heavy promise of retribution. He didn't offer pity, which she would have despised. He offered solidarity. "He can't just publish them," Sabine whispered, her hands clenched beneath the table. "That would ruin his own image of controlled power." "No. He doesn't publish them. He sends a single video to the commission, or perhaps to a discreet media source, ensuring it is traced back to a leaked file from a broken woman who can't handle rejection. He paints you as the hysterical woman obsessed with him. The videos are not about sex. They are about control and shame." Alessio finally broke the physical barrier. He moved his hand, not to touch her, but to gently cover her clenched fists on the table. It was a feather-light contact, a stark contrast to Dante's crushing grip. "Sabine," he said, his voice dropping another octave, creating a bubble of intense, quiet energy around them. "We must destroy the recordings. Now, before the wedding. The confession and shared vulnerability, the gravity of the threat forced them to shift from strategic allies to something far more intimate. They didn't speak of love, but their proximity, their shared secret, and the silent, unspoken understanding became a tangible force. Sabine led Alessio into her personal suite, the space she had fiercely guarded since her arrival. She walked straight to the secure wall safe, hidden behind a Rothko painting. I found his secure server room in New York when I burned his car. I couldn't access the files themselves. The encryption was too complex, and I had no time. But I made a digital copy of the encryption key. She opened a sleek, small lockbox, revealing a tiny flash drive. She held it out to Alessio. It's a poison pill, Alessio. If we plug this into his primary network, it won't just unlock the files. It will fry the entire Valenti surveillance system and destroy the servers. But we have to be inside the main New York compound to do it. Alessio took the drive. The air in the room was electric, charged with their shared, immediate danger. This is not a political maneuver, Sabine. This is a surgical strike. It requires crossing the country and infiltrating his most secure compound. Sabine met his gaze, the fear receding, replaced by the dangerous spark he had first sensed in her. I know. And I know the layout better than anyone. I know the blind spots, the key codes, and the habits of his security detail. I can get you in. No, Alessio said, placing the drive back in her palm. You won't get me in. We will go. Together. He stepped closer, closing the final inch between them. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a warm, overwhelming force. The physical boundary was intact, but their eyes were engaged in a conversation that was deeply sensual, a recognition of profound mutual dependence. Dante will anticipate you sending an operative, Alessio explained, his breath warm on her ear. He won't anticipate the Morano heir, the man he dismisses as a paper pusher, accompanying his runaway bride. This has to be a surgical strike, and I am not sending you into that cage alone. He reached out and gently lifted a strand of hair that had fallen loose from her severe updo. His fingers brushed the skin of her neck, a delicate, feather-like contact that sent a shiver through Sabine, a physical reaction entirely different from the paralyzing fear Dante's touch invoked. It was a shiver of choice and vulnerability. Sabine, Alessio murmured, his voice husky, we are partners in this, not principals and assets. You laid out the threat, now we dismantle it. I need you to open up every corner of your mind to me, the fear, the details, the trauma. That is the intimacy I require. Can you do that, Cara? Cara. It wasn't the possessive, demanding cardinale or tesoro. It was simply dear, a soft, respectful term that cracked the ice she had been hiding behind. Sabine lifted her hand, not pulling away from his touch, but moving her fingers to gently trace the rough, clean line of his jaw. The contact was mutual, electric, and intensely sensual, a language of shared peril and trust. If you fail, Sabine whispered, her eyes dark with the finality of the threat, if those videos ever get out, you risk everything. You risk the entire Morano legacy. I am risking it already, Sabine. But the Morano legacy is not just about money. It is about honor and freedom, Alessio countered, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. And I refuse to let that bastard use shame to destroy the woman who saved my family's future. He lowered his head, not to kiss her, but to press his forehead gently against hers. The non-sexual contact, the sheer, crushing weight of their mutual focus and shared fear, was the most intensely intimate experience Sabine had ever known. Show me the blind spots, Sabine. Tell me every detail of his movements. Tell me the precise coordinates of the cage you want to burn down, Alessio commanded, his voice a low, binding vow. Sabine closed her eyes, breathing in the clean, masculine scent of him, a scent of cool linen and quiet, immense power. She could feel the steady, reassuring beat of his heart against her forehead. For the first time, she was not submitting to a man's will, but aligning herself with a partner's strength. He always leaves the north gate unsecured between 2:15 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., Sabine confessed, the words pouring out, the release of the secret and overwhelming, sensual liberation. He thinks the old security protocols are too cumbersome, and the server room is behind the library's antique bookcase. The code is my birthday. 5. Shared fire. The journey back to New York was shrouded in the cold secrecy of an early morning fog. Sabine and Alessio flew on a nondescript private jet, not the sleek, powerful models that announced status, but a quiet machine optimized for minimal radar signature. The tension in the cabin was a living thing, thick with the silence of shared, imminent peril. They weren't talking about financial strategy anymore. They were mapping out a betrayal that could cost them their lives. Their intimacy had deepened since the night they shared the secret. It was a sensual exchange based entirely on trust and shared focus. They sat across from one another, dressed in tactical, dark clothing, a startling contrast to their usual silk and wool armor. Alessio studied the floor plans of the Valenti manor, his concentration so absolute that it drew Sabine's attention like a magnet. She watched the way the muscle worked in his forearm as he gripped the map, the faint, clean scent of his skin a grounding force in the terrifying reality of their mission. Sabine spoke only to give precise, whispered details. The safe room is steel-reinforced, but the lock is an old commission model. The sequence is binary, based on the current Matriarch's wedding anniversary date, which is no longer Serafina's. It's mine. The old security systems haven't been changed since I broke into his study 3 years ago. Alessio listened, his gaze rarely leaving the blueprint, yet every measured breath he took seemed to acknowledge her courage. Your birthday is the code for the server room, your anniversary date is the code for the safe. He built your prison entirely out of your personal details, Sabine. He owned you with your own identity. He thought he did, Sabine corrected, her voice brittle. Now we're using those keys to burn the cage down. The unspoken need. As the plane began its descent, Alessio closed the map, his eyes finally meeting hers. The look was intense, a silent conversation passing between them that surpassed all the strategies and contract terms. It was the acknowledgement of a mutual, profound need. We have 2 hours once we land, Alessio stated, his voice a low, steady command. The window is narrow. We hit the compound between 2:15 and 2:30 a.m. Dante will be at his primary penthouse residence in Manhattan, believing himself safe. We are going to his Achilles heel. He reached across the small table between them, and this time, he did not hesitate. He placed his hand over hers, not gripping, but offering a vast, steady warmth. When we walk into that house, the pressure will be immense. The memories will hit you, the rage, the fear, it will all be there. I need you to promise me you won't freeze. Sabine did not pull away. His touch was not commanding, it was anchoring. The heat of his skin felt like a shield. She turned her hand, lacing her fingers through his. The move was mutual, electric, and intensely intimate. It was the first true physical connection they had shared, shattering the untouched contract with a fragile, mutual agreement. I won't freeze, Sabine promised, her voice husky. Not with you, but you need to promise me you won't pity me, Alessio. If you see the evidence of what he did, don't pity me. Just help me burn it all down. Alessio squeezed her hand, a firm, non-negotiable pressure. Pity is useless. I offer only respect and force. We dismantle the trap he set for you, then we go home and forget this cesspit ever existed. The plane landed. They drove in a silent, unmarked car toward the Valenti compound, now shrouded in the deepest black of night. The infiltration and the trap. In the darkness, the Valenti manor loomed, a gothic shadow that represented everything Sabine had once desperately loved and everything she now hated. They moved with practiced, quiet efficiency. Sabine navigated the grounds, pointing out the thermal blind spots and the precise angle of the motion sensors. At 2:16 a.m., exactly as Sabine had predicted, the North Gate security pulse dropped, Dante's predictable cost-saving measure. They slipped inside. The house was cold and silent. Every scent, aged leather, faint traces of expensive cologne, the heavy silence of absolute power, was a trigger for Sabine. But she pushed through, her hands still firmly linked with Alessio's. The contact was no longer a negotiation. It was a lifeline. They reached the library. Sabine went straight to the dusty volume of Dante's Inferno. She pulled it out, revealing the cold steel of the safe behind. Stop, Alessio commanded softly. He knelt, his flashlight tracing a thin metallic wire running along the safe's hinge. Tripwire. Not a lethal charge, but enough to trigger an immediate, high-priority alarm. He knew you'd come for the files. It's a trap, Sabine breathed, the realization chilling her. A simple one, Alessio said, pulling a specialized, almost surgical toolkit from his bag. He was utterly calm, his concentration absolute. The light played over his focused expression, highlighting the sharp intelligence in his eyes. Sabine watched him work. His fingers, those hands she had initially judged as only fit for spreadsheets, moved with the precision of a master locksmith. They were strong, steady, and entirely non-violent. The intensity of watching him defeat Dante's latest trap, not through brute force but through superior intellect, was profoundly sensual. It was the most intimate form of protection she had ever known. A minute later, the wire was neutralized. Alessio looked up at her, a ghost of a victorious smile touching his lips. Dante relies on the fear of violence. I rely on the science of systems. Now, the code. Sabine leaned forward, her cheek close to his. The air between them was electric. The current Matriarch's anniversary date. My wedding date to you, Alessio. She whispered the digits into his ear. Alessio punched the code into the safe. It clicked open. Inside, a second, smaller safe was revealed. He layered the trap, Alessio noted, a flicker of appreciation for Dante's cruelty in his voice. "He was expecting you." The fire of truth. Sabine ignored the inner safe. She walked straight to the back of the room, behind the large antique bookcase, and punched in her own birthday. The bookcase slid open, revealing the cold, brightly lit server room, Dante's technological command center. They were inside the final cage. Sabine went straight to the master console, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the small flash drive, the poison pill. "The files are here," she confirmed, pointing to a single encrypted directory. Sabine, Archive. The sight of her own name, reduced to a cold, clinical title of ownership, flooded her with shame and rage. Alessio stood beside her, his body a solid, warm presence at her back. He placed his hands on her shoulders, rubbing them gently, grounding her in the moment. The touch was a powerful, unspoken validation that dissolved the shame. He was not judging the contents of the archive, he was supporting the architect of its destruction. "You don't need to look at it again, Kara," Alessio murmured, his lips brushing her hair. "Just end it. We dismantle the past so we can breathe in the future." Sabine inserted the flash drive into the primary network port. She initiated the sequence. The screen instantly flashed red, and the Valenti system began to scream with digital agony. The files, the years of shame, surveillance, and deceit, were being scrubbed, purged, and ultimately corrupted into oblivion. Sabine let out a shuddering breath, the tension of 3 years finally snapping. She turned quickly, her arms wrapping instantly around Alessio's neck, pulling him into a desperate, intense embrace. "Breaking the contract. It's gone," Sabine choked out, her face buried in the warm, clean linen of his shirt. "It's all gone." Alessio held her fiercely, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her flush against his solid body. He didn't speak. He simply held her, absorbing the tremor of her release. "I love you, Alessio," Sabine whispered into his neck, the words a raw, unplanned confession that surprised them both. "I don't know when, but I love you. You never forced me. You just waited." Alessio pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes dark with a powerful, restrained emotion that eclipsed all the politics and strategies they had shared. He gently reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones. "The contract is irrelevant now, Sabine," Alessio whispered, his voice thick with unspent desire and profound tenderness. "There has been no boundary between us since you showed me the fire in your soul." He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Sabine did not. She tilted her chin up, meeting him halfway. The kiss was the antithesis of everything she had endured with Dante. It was not consuming or demanding. It was mutual, deep, and reverent. His lips were soft, his touch a careful, exploring caress that sought permission, not conquest. It was a sensual, breathtaking confirmation that she was cherished, not owned. Alessio deepened the kiss, his hands moving from her face to the small of her back, pulling her tightly against him. The physical contact was overwhelming, safe, and exhilarating. It wasn't the heat of rage. It was the fire of mutual, genuine passion. The console behind them let out a final, sputtering death gasp, and the lights in the server room died. Alessio broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers. "The system is dead. Dante knows we were here. We have minutes." He kissed her again, fiercely, quickly, a promise for the future. "Come home, Mia Regina. We're leaving this cage for good." He took her hand, pulling her from the server room. They left the Valenti manor, leaving behind the shattered remains of the files, the silent security system, and the ghosts of Sabine's past, and fled into the pre-dawn darkness, bound for Boston and their final decisive victory. 6. The unlocked cage. The escape from the Valenti compound was smooth, precise, and utterly silent. By the time Dante Valenti's security detail discovered the catastrophic digital silence emanating from the estate, Sabine and Alessio were already airborne, heading back to Boston. The destruction of the servers and the permanent deletion of the archive of shame was their final act of revenge, a ghost they had successfully laid to rest. As they flew, the adrenaline of the mission gave way to the quiet, profound afterglow of shared risk and newfound love. Sabine was draped across the luxurious leather seat, her head resting on Alessio's shoulder, their hands interlaced across her chest. The quiet intensity of their shared kiss in the server room had transcended every boundary, every contract, and every fear Sabine had carried. "It's done," Sabine murmured, her voice thick with exhaustion and relief. "The archive is ash." Alessio pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head. "And your future is clean, Mia Regina." He has no leverage left. He shifted, turning to face her. "He is disgraced. The Commission will see the server destruction as a deliberate, direct attack on his own security. They will realize he didn't contain you. He underestimated you. Your father's alliance, now ratified by your wedding this afternoon, will look like a stroke of genius, not a panicked concession." Sabine lifted her head, meeting his gaze. You always think 3 steps ahead, Alessio. You don't play chess, you restructure the entire board. I learned that to survive, he admitted, his eyes holding hers with a deep, steady affection. But I learned the meaning of honor from you, Sabine. You risked everything for the truth, not just for safety. He reached up, gently tucking a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear. The contract is formally broken. No more boundaries, no more untouched spaces. Only what we build together. Sabine smiled, a rare, radiant expression that lit her entire face. I think I like the Morano protocol much better now. The perfect union. They landed in Boston just after dawn. There was no rest. The wedding was scheduled for noon. It was a small, high-security ceremony held in the estate's chapel, attended only by the core Morano family and a few key, observing members of the commission. This was not a celebration of love, but a political ratification of power. Sabine walked down the aisle not with her father, but with the venerable Don Morano, Alessio's father, a symbolic handover of a powerful political asset. She wore the sapphire heirloom necklace, the one Alessio had given her, now imbued with the memory of their shared fire. She was regal, composed, and undeniably powerful. When she reached Alessio, he took her hand, his thumb resting gently on the pulse point of her wrist, a private, comforting gesture only she would notice. The vows were simple, traditional, and binding. As Alessio spoke his pledge, I swear my allegiance to this house and to the woman who stands with me in the sight of God and man. His eyes never left hers. It wasn't just a political oath. It was the vow of the man who had risked his empire for her soul. The moment the wedding pronouncement was made, a ripple of quiet understanding passed through the assembled commission members. The Cassini-Morano alliance was now legally, politically, and personally unbreakable. The final word, the reception, was a study in controlled elegance. As the new Morano matriarch, Sabine moved through the room with a calm authority she had never possessed in New York. She was no longer the wild princess. She was a queen on her own throne. In the midst of the receiving line, Alessio's consigliere handed him a sealed, plain envelope. Alessio excused himself, and Sabine followed him into a nearby study. It's from New York, Alessio stated, breaking the seal. A courtesy communication from the Valenti family. The note inside was brief, penned by a subordinate, not Dante. Due to the unforeseen and catastrophic loss of assets, both physical and digital, the Valenti family formally retracts any claim or objection regarding the Morano-Cassini alliance. The former heir, Dante Valenti, has been placed on indefinite mandatory leave from all commission affairs. His actions regarding the asset Sabine Cassini are deemed detrimental to the structure of the family. Sabine read the words. Dante was disgraced, exiled from the power he coveted most. The silence of his downfall was louder than any bullet. He's been stripped of everything, Sabine observed, her voice devoid of triumph, holding only a quiet finality. His position, his purpose, his future. She then reached into the pocket of her wedding gown. She pulled out her private, untraceable phone, the one she had replaced after smashing the one in New York. She composed a single text, encrypting it and sending it to an old burner number she knew Dante still kept active. She showed the screen to Alessio. The principessa you caged is gone. This queen builds her own throne. That's his final receipt, Sabine said, placing the phone on the desk. He will know the cost was his silence, his power, and his reputation. We are finished with him. Building the throne, the sun began to set over the Morano estate, marking the end of the long, tumultuous day. Later that night, in the privacy of their shared suite, no longer separate, no longer untouched, Sabine and Alessio found the quiet resolution their souls desperately needed. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the fireplace. Sabine had shed her heavy wedding gown, now dressed in a simple silk robe. She stood by the window, watching the moonlight on the choppy water. Alessio approached her from behind, his arms gently wrapping around her waist. This touch was entirely different from the necessary, tactical intimacy of the past week. It was slow, warm, and deeply reassuring. You look beautiful, Mrs. Morano, Alessio murmured, resting his chin on her shoulder. Sabine leaned back into his strength. I'm still Sabine, Alessio. And I'm not fragile. I know, he agreed, turning her gently to face him. He didn't rush. He simply stood there, admiring the fierce, intelligent woman he had married. You are the cardinal. The most vital piece. I do not want a fragile wife, Sabine. I want a partner. He framed her face in his hands. We have conquered his fear, dismantled his shame, and defeated his political maneuverings. Now, we build, not just an empire, but a home. He sealed his promise with a long, slow kiss that was the perfect blend of the respect that had won her heart and the desire that had been simmering between them for weeks. It was a kiss of shared safety and thrilling, mutual desire. Sabine returned the kiss with a depth of feeling she hadn't known she possessed, her hands moving to thread through his hair, pulling him closer. The walls were down, the contract was broken, and the cage was finally unlocked. She was no longer the pawn of the Cassini dynasty, or the prisoner of the Valenti ego. She was the cornerstone of the Morano legacy, the chosen queen of an honorable man, finally free to choose her own fire and her own future. End of